but nobody's talking about global monetary risks about stablecoins. And I think that it's a really important discussion. Stablecoins are gonna be a huge polemic topic in the next couple of years. And people that don't see that, they could be expecting a black swan, but it's not a black swan. We've been analyzing how Brazil is one of the most advanced markets regarding regulation, and now they're debating a stablecoin strategic reserve on August the 20th.
Governments need to establish strategic Bitcoin reserves. I think this is huge, man, and I'm so excited to see them advance here.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Frontera, the podcast where we analyze crypto insights from frontier markets. I'm Mab, co-founder and CEO of Bando. I'm with my great friend Kush, founder of Odyssea Labs. I'm happy to be back. Last week I was enjoying Britpop Summer, watching Oasis live, such an amazing experience. Now I'm back, fully energized, with a lot of things to do. There's gonna be a lot of things happening in the upcoming weeks and months in Latin America, one of the frontier markets that we cover. So Kush, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I missed you. We had Lalo on last time, but it's always, and then I think the previous one was with Joker. So finally, really happy to be back here with you. And as always, I think lots of exciting news and lots of exciting takes. And I don't know, I just really appreciate this space to be able to jam on where crypto is heading and, share our theses on why this space is so exciting. So let's do it.
Yeah, amazing. So remember that we are partnering with the Stablecoin conference of Bitso. You can have a discount code. It's Frontera 10, I think, the discount code. And this week I want to start with one of the coolest announcements that we've done recently. And it's that we're hosting the official closing party of the Stablecoin conference. It's going to be on August 28th in La Condesa. That is a neighborhood just 15 minutes away from the venue. We are hosting it with Bridge and Privy. They are the sponsors of this closing party. So it's going to be insane. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have the top builders, top founders, top executives, everyone from the Stablecoin conference just enjoying some time together. So you need to go to the Luma. We're going to put the link to the Luma in the show notes. And as you are a Frontera listener, you obviously have a code. This party is reserved for people that are going to the Stablecoin conference. So it's going to be top-notch, really great people around. And the code for you to enter to this party, to the Luma, is Frontera CDMX, like Mexico City, CDMX. And that's, in that way, we're going to be able to see who you are. And we have 20 spots for this specific episode of Frontera. So please go register, use the code Frontera CDMX. It's going to be amazing. I'm really excited to throw this party. Man, these were huge news. I mean, having Bridge and Privy as sponsors of the event, what do you think?
This is super exciting. I'm just really looking forward to the Stablecoin conference. We were chatting with the Stablecoin conference team, and they were like, "Thank you for believing us from the beginning," because we were basically I remember we had the conversations with them from day zero pretty much, and we said yes. I mean, this is this is the importance of foresight and insights and research, because you can take really strategic bets, right? And for us, it's stablecoins in Latin America matter a lot, Bitso matters a lot, and so let's make this happen. Frontera CDMX is the code. Looking forward to seeing a whole bunch of you there and jamming and. It's going to be a fun time. I feel that the social layer is also so important, right? And being able to convene and have a good time with people is critical.
Yeah, and dude, I think that we should record the next Frontera episode, on the 27th and the 28th from the venue. We'll, get some microphones, get a camera there, and just jam. We don't need a lot of things. It's amazing the amount of leverage that you can have today. I mean, producing something like Frontera 15 years ago at a venue would be a crew of, 8 people. And right now, 2 microphones, 1 computer, a DJI camera, and we're all set to go. So, dude, I want to start as each week discussing the essay that we published recently, last week. And the essay that we published is around stablecoins again, and I think that fits perfectly in the Frontera narrative, and basically the stablecoin conference. And I think that something that we haven't seen there a lot is that a lot of people are super bullish on stablecoins. Obviously, we are super bullish on stablecoins, but nobody's talking about risks, like global monetary risks about stablecoins. And I think that it's a really important discussion because we're going to start seeing a lot of governments having different policies towards stablecoins, and nobody should be surprised because we see that coming really fast and really hard. So the thing that we analyzed in the most recent Frontera essay is that there's a lot of adoption on stablecoins, but the way that we see it coming from an emerging market, from a frontier market, is that basically stablecoins are the best way to grab US debt and export it. And what does this mean? So when we analyze what's like the current situation of the debt, the US debt, basically they're in a moment where basically they need to refinance their debt. They need to lower interest rates, not to incentivize consumption, but to reduce the amount of interest that they're paying on their debt. And most of the debt today is held by the people in the United States. And what will happen when we come to this world where there's infinite demand for stablecoins, and that's emerging markets? And I'd like to jump into these scenarios that we are analyzing. So what frontier markets can do when there's infinite demand for stablecoins? This means that if there's infinite demand for stablecoins, it's infinite selling pressure of their fiat currencies, of the Mexican peso, the Brazilian real, the Nigerian naira, the Kenyan shilling. Basically, if everyone wants dollars through stablecoins, everyone wants to sell their fiat currency. And the scenarios that we see are three. The first one is building a wall, the way that we frame it. So basically is, for example, Brazil is already proposing some restriction for stablecoin payments. So people won't be able to transfer more than, I think, like $5,000 a month. Because when we chat with Aaron Stanley from the Brazil Crypto Report, he told us that the third, in the P&L of Brazil, the third line of outflows from Brazil were stablecoins, USDT specifically. So this is starting to have a global impact. I wanna go through the other scenarios that we see, but how do you see this specific point about building a wall? Which governments do you think that are gonna take this stance instead of embracing the next point, that is joining the empire?
I mean, I think we've already seen governments try to build walls, right? So China, for example, is not a proponent of crypto writ large. Then we have Venezuela that is also trying to really push out a lot of local kind of crypto activity, which we have discussed previously as well. Bolivia, that for a very long time blocked out the adoption of crypto in the region, or specifically in their country. And then they reversed that policy entirely. So I'm actually just not a fan whatsoever of governments trying to block crypto in this way, specifically stablecoins again, because it's just not going to work, right? And so I think it's people can try it, but it simply won't be an effective strategy. Yeah, how do you think about this particular take? Why would a government choose to do that? And what other avenues should they be exploring as they're thinking about sort of advancing strategies and engagements with stablecoins?
Yeah, I think that this is one of the hardest questions for macroeconomic and global monetary policy, because every time that you try to ban a technology, when there is demand, technology finds its way. So, for example, the thing that I was saying, 20% of Brazil outflows were in stablecoins. And if that's 20% of outflows, basically that's people selling Brazilian real for dollar and depreciating the Brazilian real. I mean, people could try to make up or try to put a silver lining around this in a way that they say, but maybe it's a flight to quality, or they are trying to go to a better fiat currency. But when being absolutely honest, this is something about sovereignty. So it's really hard to see what will be the position. Also, I think that the other way to see it, and the other scenario that we put here, is joining the empire. And I know that it sounds like a Star Wars, I don't know, take, but it's real. I mean, we've seen this already without stablecoins. Some countries like Ecuador, Panama, El Salvador, they've adopted US dollar as legal tender already, because basically their local currencies went to zero. Specifically in El Salvador, after a horrible civil war, their fiat currency was so in a bad position that they decided to adopt the US dollar. And the problem here is that I think that this is more a philosophical discussion on what is sovereignty. Can you be a sovereign country without having sovereignty on your own money? I'm not sure that that's possible. And if we see stablecoins as these weapons, maybe, and it's a hard word, but it's a weapon to maximize dollar hegemony, it's a really hard thing to wrap your mind around. And also, I think that the most important thing that I want to put out there is that most of crypto media is American, right? From the US. So they see this as something positive. They see this as, okay, yeah, let's fucking go the US dollar. But what happens when there's basically a lot of people around the world that don't feel like that? Like, where do we put a stablecoin in that position, right? So yeah, it's a really hard thing to do. It's a really hard thing to analyze. At the end, obviously, in my idealistic point of view, the best way out would be taking a chance. That's the third scenario. And that's something like what El Salvador is doing, and it's adopting the Bitcoin standard. I don't know if I'm already like to a Bitcoin maxi, but I don't see a fourth scenario. I mean, it's like either you ban it, you embrace it, or you opt out of the system.
Yeah. I mean, I think that for sure a lot of, we'll likely see more countries dollarize, not necessarily because of stablecoins, but just because their currencies will inevitably face really high inflation. And if it's a trend that we're already seeing happening in a few markets, there's no reason as to why it wouldn't happen elsewhere. I think, I oftentimes think about Guatemala, for example, where 18% of our GDP is denominated in dollars because of the substantial amounts of remittance flows that comes into the country. And so therefore we have this like infinite sort of pressure coming into the country that essentially, props up the value of the quetzal, right? Because people are constantly buying quetzales in the country. And the quetzal has always been
the other way around. That's the other way around, right? Like because people need to convert it to pay, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And so like that's an interesting anecdote, and El Salvador has a ton of remittances as well. I suppose at the time that they made the decision to turn towards the dollar, there perhaps weren't as many remittances, and maybe their prior currency would have actually held itself up quite well. If given that they also have a substantial amount of their GDP denominated in dollars and an inflow of dollars. And ultimately, I do feel like there's some questions as well, and this is something that we spoke about with Lalo last time around like Bukele's tenure as president, and like what happens if, let's call it in 20 years time, right, is maybe when his regime may end. What happens when the next president wants to perhaps like dump all of the Bitcoin, right? And I think that's like generally like this problem with rule of law that happens oftentimes in the region is you can have one president come in, establish all these amazing policies, and the next one will just overturn it and overthrow the policies that one particular regime will implement. So, I think that's like a wider macro problem that happens here in the region, and it's oftentimes why a lot of institutions have a hard time engaging, because they understand that there's like really high legal risks of doing so, right? So, yeah, I'm curious how you think about the shifting kind of political environments in the region and how they may impact the adoption of countries with regards to stablecoins, right? So if you think about like I don't know, why do these oftentimes, like, I don't know, Mexico, for example, I oftentimes talk about this friend who is like, the Bank of Mexico will never buy Bitcoin, for example, right? But could it be that at some point, I don't know, Claudia Sheinbaum says, actually, I want to buy Bitcoin? Like, unlikely, but yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think that um, someone inside the Bank of Mexico would consider that impossible until it happens. You know, it's like the classical bureaucracy of, like, I don't know, Blockbuster saying Netflix will never kill us until they die, right? And I won't say I don't say that the Bank of Mexico will die. Actually, I think that the Bank of Mexico is one of the most respected institutions in our country. Like, everybody knows, we don't have the government in high standards, but our national bank, I think that a lot of Mexicans respect it. And something that I've been thinking is that maybe I see a world where, obviously, it'll be a middle point. It'll be a middle ground. I don't think that neither these three scenarios will completely shape out, because it's not going to be an empire. We're not going to have like walled gardens with huge walls, and not everybody's going to adopt Bitcoin. What I think it'll happen is that we'll start seeing in the next 20 to 30 years the division of two things. The first one, state and money. Like in the 1800s, there was this big in the world, or well, before, between the 1600s and the 1800s was this big division between state and church, and now for us it's obvious that it should be divided. In the next maybe 100 years, we'll see a division between state and money, because right now money is really coupled with government. And the second thing that we'll start seeing how it decouples is the division between different use cases for money, like using different monies for different use cases. For example, the thing that you were saying of people selling a lot of dollars in Guatemala because they receive remittances, because they have inflows. So, and they do that because they need to do payments. So if we see the different forms and use cases of money, for store of value, definitely Bitcoin is a better store of value than basically anything else, but maybe the dollar is better than the quetzal. But in Guatemala, the dollar is not a better money for payments, right? So we're gonna start seeing that decoupling of different use cases. The problem with this, not the problem, but my personal stance is that we are here to explore that frontier. As founders, as technologists, we should create the products that push the boundary. And if we're wrong, well, basically, that's the thing about building technology. You could be wrong, but if we're right, there's a huge upside, depending on each of the stances that you take.
One of the there's a picture I oftentimes think about specifically to this point, and it's like Trump's inauguration, and who was front row at the inauguration, right? It was like Zuckerberg, Musk, Bezos, etc. And so, and I oftentimes think about like perhaps you and I might have been like politicians in the past, right? Because we're drawn towards like wanting, and that's how we felt was the most effective way for us to like move the needle. But I think that in today's day and age, I do think entrepreneurship and technology are the most effective means of moving energy in the world. And I think that, and it's why I love the like network state thesis as well, because now it's like, now we can actually sort of separate the state entirely to some extent, right? And we can build new states. And yeah, just so freaking bullish, like that particular thing.
Yeah, and it's amazing how this point on stable coins, I think that this is one of the debates that is more in the frontier and not a lot of people then again is talking about, because I think that then the same thing, American media, a lot of people don't see like the long tail effects, and because we are covering frontier markets every week, we can see this, and it's kind of obvious for me, and I think that for you too. I mean, stablecoins are gonna be a huge polemic topic in the next couple of years. And people that don't see that, they could be expecting a black swan, but it's not a black swan. There gonna be a prediction, could be at least one BRIC country will ban stablecoins. One other BRIC country, maybe Russia has already done it, I'm not sure, but that'll happen. I see India, maybe Brazil, maybe Russia, because they have such a strong block that they could coordinate to do that. And that would put like the American USD denominated stablecoins not in the best spot, because basically they lose their all that demand. So let's see how it goes. Let's move through the docket, because I think that we have a ton of things to do to analyze.
This is what I love. I feel like we can just jam forever, but
Yeah.
let's do it.
Yeah. Dude, tell us about this new program that you just launched.
Yes. So we just announced Ascend, which is essentially a program focused on RWA teams, where we're going to be working with leaders across the RWA ecosystem. So we've got the likes of Galaxy, Centrifuge, Morpho, RWAXYZ, Tokenized Asset Coalition, amongst a whole host of other like top industry leaders in the RWA ecosystem. It's going to be a 9-week program. We've got top industry mentors and experts and advisors and so forth too. We're just in the midst of the applications. I have been meeting with a lot of these founders that are applying, and I can say without a doubt the quality of talent of people applying to this program is next level. We'll have demo day at the end. We'll have 500K in funding available for the different partners as well, but Key Rock, like just massive institutions. And then mentors wise, sort of the advisors, everything from Nick Van Eck from Agora is one of the advisors as well. Gami from the Defiant, people from Fenwick, Coinbase Ventures, obviously the Plume team, the co-founder of Axie Infinity, like just cracked mentors. The Sony Innovation Fund, like really next level. Why is this relevant for emerging markets? Because I have spoken about this anecdote before, where we bought some land and like 3 years later are still waiting for the land to like be processed under our name, right? And this is in theory like a vertical that real world assets will be able to address. So this is what I love about RWAs. I think there's a lot of excitement around RWAs in emerging markets as well, and what RWAs will be able to unlock, right? And Bondi, for example, one of the teams we work with, tokenizes corporate bonds from emerging markets and brings them on chain that yield like 15-20% interest rate, private credit. And so this is, these sort of lines, I think particularly in emerging markets have an opportunity to make a meaningful dent, going back to the leapfrog thesis. So I'm curious, like your take on RWAs and how you see them and their impact in emerging markets.
Yeah, real world assets. I've always had a problem with that term, because I like more like physical, or I don't know, but let's not discuss the name of this type of assets. But something that I see is that yesterday I was talking with like a huge fund. They're going after the retirement fund and pension market, and basically it's really clear to see how things connect. The thing is that you have to have those assets tokenized. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity in frontier markets for RWAs, because we have such a lag in the way that they function, that it's a perfect market for this type of solutions. And tell me, is this focused for frontier markets, or anyone around the world can apply? What's the objective? What's the target user, the target founder?
Yeah, it's global program, which is also really exciting because I just love being able to operate on the global stage. You sort of open up your funnel with regards to the quality of founders that you end up working with, but we've seen quite a few builders from Asia, Latin America, and so forth come on board. So yeah, man, super exciting. If there are any cracked RWA builders out there that want, it's a really cool program. We're only going to be having about 6 to 8 teams. So it's a very small, very elite group of founders that are going to be going through the program. So we'll keep you updated as that unfolds.
Amazing. So moving on the docket. So there's this news this week that Monad they tweeted Monad Heart LatAm. So, and it's a video of one of the founders of Monad speaking in Spanish, actually. They are running a hackathon in Mexico next week, and it's really interesting to see. I think that everyone has waken up to the opportunity of specifically LatAm and stablecoins. So there's a big, we talk about it every week, and there's a big opportunity. And Monad is one of the teams that has been, it's one of the projects that's super exciting and created a lot of hype in the crypto world. And now they are deploying in this hackathon in Mexico. We saw this year Solana Apex. So let's do a quick recap of things that happened in Latin America this year. Solana Apex in Mexico City, the Uniswap House in Mexico City, well, in Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, and Argentina. Also, the Starknet Startup House we did in Mexico. Monad is doing a hackathon in Mexico. So I don't know, anything else?
DevConnect.
DevConnect in Argentina.
Edge City in Patagonia, Stablecoin Conference. I'm sure we're missing like a bunch of things.
Dude, I think that's more. This year has happened more. That if you add everything that happened in the last 7 years, literally, this year more things happened. So the crypto industry woke up to Latin America, and I think that I'm really happy that we're pushing this narrative because we're the best ones to analyze it. And moving on, also in other news, we've been analyzing how Brazil is one of the most advanced markets regarding regulation, crypto adoption, in the sense that they are really financially savvy. It's a gigantic market. And now they're debating a stablecoin strategic reserve on August the 20th. So what are your takes on specifically Brazil analyzing a Bitcoin strategic reserve? Does it make sense for them? Do you think it's just like a political gimmick? What's your position there?
I mean, we've spoken about the fact that governments need to establish strategic Bitcoin reserves. It's no longer a matter of if. And so now rather it's, okay, well, how fast are you planning to do this, right? I'm a little bit concerned about like everyone FOMOing into crypto. It's like, this is, again, we've talked about like the fact that we're probably entering the euphoric state, and crypto, just like all markets, is very cyclical, and this is always what ends up happening. It's like governments want to buy it, and universities are buying it, and your mom is asking you how to buy it, and people just end up buying the top, and then they end up being severely burnt. And so, I guess but the key takeaway here is at least they're having an official audience about should you not be establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. So, I think this is huge, man, and I'm so excited to see them advance here.
Dude, and take a look on the speakers of this audience. It's this guy called Diego Colling that is head of Bitcoin strategy at Melius. Melius is the Brazilian MicroStrategy. So
yep, exactly.
I think that we've reported this type of news a couple times, and I think that this is the most serious one because they are actually having an audience. It's not just like a random person submitting a random senator submitting a proposal. And moving along the news, I think that this is your topic, El Salvador and Bitcoin. What's up with this Bitcoin office and the news about Bitcoin and banks in El Salvador?
Yeah, so El Salvador just announced that they're going to be, they shared this tweet from the Bitcoin office, and it just speaks to, like, again, the need for innovation in emerging markets, like the first Bitcoin law, first strategic Bitcoin reserve, Bitcoin embassy, AI law, robot law, B300 chips, financial literacy programs, blue ocean strategies, great man. I don't know what the great man in modern history is. Anyways, the point is, like, again, it's like, if you're a country that is adopting Bitcoin as a strategic reserve, you're also a country that's likely going to lean heavily into AI. You're a country that's going to lean heavily into robotics. So, and now they're launching this like Bitcoin bank, and banking has always been this like critical on and off ramping as a whole, right? Is like, how do you actually make crypto spendable? And I think that in theory, banking will unlock this opportunity for people in El Salvador, right? And globally, right? It's like we've seen, there are entire jurisdictions that prop themselves up by having, like, I don't know, Liechtenstein, for example, is a country that's infamous for for essentially their banking industry. So this is what I'm saying. Like I think that El Salvador establishing this bank will hopefully drive a lot of like even more economic activity to the country, in a country that doesn't have great agriculture, doesn't have like necessarily highly skilled population. So how do you interpret this law and or this tweet, this bull post, right, and what it means for the country, the Bitcoin Bank as well, and being sort of pioneers in the space?
I really like that. I mean, this is a cool experiment because they're running it, and they are not backing down. This loan that they had from the World Bank, it was like a menace for them. They should stop their Bitcoin endeavors, and they are not stopping. And I really like that because we don't see it anywhere else in the world. So let's see how it goes. I think that when you go, well, I've never been to El Salvador, but you've hung around a lot there, and people are really happy with things that are happening. I don't know, safety is ramping up. You can criticize Nayib Bukele's quasi-dictatorial positions, but at the end, it's a matter of well-being. It's a matter of how people are receiving this type of actions. It's also really hard from a political view because when there's such a strong government with such a strong leader, those things it can go out of hand really fast, right? Totally. So I think that we should be critical about it. On the other hand, I like the experiment of the Bitcoin Nation, right? Though I think that these are the most important news. You wanted to talk about this of Harvard. Let's finish this episode there.
Yeah. So this is a tweet from Pump, and essentially the news is that Harvard bought $116 million worth of the Bitcoin ETF, which, by the way, is probably up now a little bit now that Bitcoin hit all-time highs. So I think that the key thing for me here, and why does this matter for frontier markets, there are very few reputable institutions in the world that are like credibly neutral to some extent, such as Harvard, right? Like Harvard is one of the leading academic institutions that, in theory, some of the smartest people in the world are making decisions at this institution. And so as we think about like what institutional adoption looks like across Latin America, which increasingly is becoming like a lot of my thinking and thought process, being able to point to Harvard and saying, look, Harvard is doing it, BlackRock is doing it, all these other like key actors are adopting this technology, you should be looking at this as well. I think it's just another really great data point, right? If we talk again, let's go back to the Bank of Mexico. Like the Bank of Mexico probably really looks up to Harvard, right? And thinks like Harvard economists, and there are probably some Harvard economists that work at the Bank of Mexico. And so being able to use that as an additional data point, I think is important. And how do you think about institutional legitimacy and what it will take for banks? And I don't know, maybe there's like El Tec de Monterrey will allocate some of its capital into crypto at some point, reading this news, right?
I would love it. The thing is that El Tec de Monterrey, that is my alma mater, they don't have such a huge endowment. So maybe they would buy one Bitcoin. I don't know. The thing is that I understand the news. Just I don't think that Harvard is a credibly neutral institution. I think that they've been really publicly leaning towards left and some woke ideologies at some points. But the thing is, I give you the point that it's a matter of reputation. It's not the same that Harvard buys Bitcoin than a random community college that they couldn't even buy Bitcoin because they don't have an endowment, right? So it's a great signaling. It's great signaling. So now we have pension funds, we have endowments, we have hedge funds, we have basically all financial institutions buying Bitcoin. And not only all financial institutions, governments also, but some important ones. So I see as Harvard buying Bitcoin as a huge validation, completely. And what I'd like to see is also, for frontier markets, I don't know what's the read, because it's a validation, and it'll maybe incentivize some people to FOMO in. But I don't see a lot of similarities in frontier markets with this. It's super bullish, but I'm like having a problem trying to connect it to our markets.
I think for me, it's like the story here is like that Harvard is a household name in the mind share of like decision makers around the world. And again, it's like if you look at the Harvard Kennedy School, for example, they've had, I don't know, like dozens of presidents go through the Harvard Kennedy School, right? And so like I'm currently in Ecuador. The president of Ecuador went to the Harvard Kennedy School. And so if he can then go to his assembly and say, hey, like Harvard is buying this, and he has this like incentive, I think it's just like, how do we get this more and more mainstream? And then that mainstream nature will just cascade across the world. I think that's like super, super bullish. So, yeah.
I think that we cannot go more mainstream than this. I mean,
Exactly.
Trump, the president of the United States, was at a crypto conference giving a speech. I mean, the next thing is Paul McCartney buying Bitcoin. No? I don't know how high or Taylor Swift. I'm not sure, right? But yeah, I completely see. Dude, where are you gonna be next week?
I am going to be here in Ecuador next week, and then I'll be in Mexico City for a stablecoin conference, man. So excited. And yeah, we've got just like the continuous sort of lineup of guests we'll be having is super exciting as well. So looking forward to having those people on the pod.
Amazing. Dude, well, thank you. As always, go to our Beehive, subscribe to our newsletter. We are producing the best essays as always. And thank you for listening. Remember, we have the after party, the closing party. Frontera CDMX is the code. So please, we'll see you there. We're gonna record a bunch of content. If you see us in the party, let's chat. I always love when someone stops us and say, hey, I really like Frontera, because this is my favorite content, really, from the Espacio
awesome,
Crypto Bando universe. So thank you, man. Appreciate you, and see you next week.
Peace.